Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. I am your host, Redbeard, where we always put liberty first and we do the very best to maintain and preserve our principles. And we don't compromise on these things, right? So, without further ado, we're going to kind of get into it. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter one to kind of make up for Saturday. A lot has gone on, probably a lot more than what I think everybody can cover, but we're going to hit on a few major things. First off, thank you so much for coming and watching the episode, supporting the channel, and supporting the show. If you like what you see, maybe toss a like, subscribe, share it, whatever makes the most sense for you. Either way, I greatly appreciate all of the support and everybody that comes by to watch the episode. So before we get too crazy, there's something really interesting that I had seen, and I'm not going to be the first person to talk about this, but I do think it is worth mentioning. Now, it's been a fairly, if I can figure out what I'm trying to do here, it's been a fairly tumultuous last couple of days. We've seen everything from interdictions and seizing tankers to actually using force. I believe there was a round shot through the engine room of one of the tankers before having been boarded. So we're seeing the United States become a little bit more provocative in that sense. But before we get into that, there is something that I think is pretty interesting that I think is worth bringing up, and it's this. Essentially, and this is all, alleged. It's all being reported on. I'm not going to say whether it's confirmed or not confirmed or whatever the case is. I simply don't know that. But I did find it fairly interesting. This was published 1 day ago, and it's not going to give me I don't see. At any rate. But essentially, it says Trump blocked from nuclear codes by military general during the Iran conflict. Retired CIA analyst Larry Johnson claimed on the Judging Freedom podcast, a podcast that's run by Judge Andrew Napolitano, that the president, Donald Trump, attempted to use nuclear codes against Iran during a Saturday meeting. But chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, refused. Now, whether that is true or whether that is not, it's quite an assertion. And if there is any water to something like that, I would say it's quite problematic. I mean, you're talking about a person who is wanting to potentially do something with those codes, which the only thing that you really do with those codes is to use those codes, right? So we have to ask ourselves, where is the mentality of Trump, if this is true, and if there's any water to it at all, and what does that mean for moving forward? Now, we have seen escalation. First, it started with the blockade, and thankfully that there were no shots fired between Iran and the United States. And upon the initial blockade by the United States some days ago, right? But in the end of the day, what we're seeing is this escalation that's occurring, and we are seeing in Iran that recently, I believe it was about 24, maybe 48 hours ago, that said, no, we're not going to negotiate. That's not what we're doing. Now, that's what I know so far, but that seemed to be some pretty strong words. Now, I've seen a few contradictory articles saying that supposedly the ceasefire was extended, but that's also something that's being claimed by Trump, in which, if we've learned anything about Trump so far, it's the fact that if he's saying something, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, right? I mean, you should take a lot of things with a grain of salt, but especially what it is that he's saying, because he'll say one thing and then you'll have other people come out and say, well, none of this ever happened whatsoever. So we need to keep our eyes on the prize here and see what's going to continue to go on. whether there's going to be continued escalation, which from the actions of the United States, it seems essentially like we're very interested in seizing and boarding and striking tankers in order to gain control over them. Now, whatever we do with those tankers is a mystery to us, the lowly people in the United States. But I think it spells a very, very problematic situation. We have a situation where this government, this federal government feels that it has the ability to just go forth and do whatever it wants around the world, unmitigatedly so. And it's a very, very dangerous sentiment. It's not something that I think people should write off. It's not something that I feel people should let go. You're having this culmination of this arrogance and this attitude that eventually does catch up to you. And it does so typically in a very harsh manner. Now, when we look at something like what I have up here, about the nuclear codes, that's very problematic, because it's now we've gone from seizing ships to nuclear codes, right? So as it continues to go on a little bit further here, I want to just go down these points here. Tensions between the U.S. and Iran have escalated sharply since late February, following joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iranian targets, prompting retaliatory attacks across the Middle East and forcing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, shipping routes. Separate reports suggest that Trump was previously barred from the Situation Room by military advisors during an Iran rescue operation, with senior officials citing concerns his unpredictability could jeopardize the mission. Official sources have not confirmed Johnson's allegations. Again, I said that, it's alleged, it's not something that's confirmed. And critics have questioned the retired analyst's credibility. Noting he frequently appears on platforms critical of U.S. foreign policy. Now, that point in and of itself, I think, is ridiculous. I don't think being critical of something necessarily makes you incredible. It's one of those things that I feel you have this situation to where it's like, oh, they're critical of U.S. foreign policy, so they must not be credible. They must not be wrong. I'm the type of person to where it's like, okay, let's sit down. Let's see what somebody has to say, and hopefully we can try and figure this stuff out. I've listened to Larry Johnson quite a bit on Judge Napolitano's show, on Daniel Davis's show, and just by I would argue that when you look at Napolitano and Daniel Davis, I don't feel like they would put their own credibility and their own reputation on the line with somebody that they didn't feel was worthy of having. So I have to kind of lend myself a little bit to believe that maybe there's something that we don't fundamentally know. I'm not sure, but either way, if that in and of itself is not credible, which I don't blame somebody for feeling is not credible, I do think it's interesting that you do have this other point here talking about the fact that Trump was previously barred from the Situation Room by military advisors during the Iran rescue mission. Look, notwithstanding the whole nuclear codes thing, that alone that's quite a situation in and of itself, right? Because now you're essentially having this schism that's occurring to where they don't feel like he's stable enough to where he should be around a military operation. The commander in chief, that is part of the role of being the president. Look, if you are not fit to be able to make these particular judgment calls, perhaps maybe you are not fit to be in that office. I'm just saying. It's one of those things that people really should sit down and think about and be like, hey, you got people that's keeping them out of these operations. Maybe we need to try and figure out what the heck is going on here, and whether or not he can do the job. I mean, we have seen just insane unpredictability, insane, all of this insane posting and just, some of this, some of the things that have been coming out of the guy, it really does make a person wonder, like, where is that mental stability at, and whether or not he's capable of doing this. So, and when you go back and you look at just the entirety of when we started talking with Iran all the way up till now, I mean, I would argue that a rational person doesn't bomb the delegation that another country sends to negotiate. That's not a rational person. I don't think that's a mentally fit person. I don't think that's somebody that's rational. And then you act surprised when their reaction is, oh, we should probably defend ourselves. And then there's no trust there. And you take the current situation, you look at Hormuz, you look at now you have the United States that's seizing ships. Tensions are high. There's talks already about ramping up, preparing for another volley of fire. So I mean, this situation is I would argue, even with this quote unquote ceasefire that they supposedly had, I never really believed that it was something that fundamentally had any real staying power. I will be extremely shocked if we see something that doesn't amount to some form of escalation. Now, I could be wrong, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I just really don't feel that we're going to see de-escalation from this administration, most certainly probably from the rhetoric coming out of Trump. I do want to point out this bottom portion here. A temporary ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran remains in effect as both governments weigh whether to resume direct negotiations. Now, that was yesterday. Supposedly, from what I've seen, it was supposed to end today, but I'm not entirely sure what the outcome of that is. Again, as far as I know, and from what I have read, Iran just really does not, they don't really seem very interested in talking. As long as, and it was essentially asserted, they're not interested in talking so long as the United States continues its blockade of Hormuz, which in and of itself is kind of its own situation. So I think there's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot to kind of digest. Just want to give a couple shout outs here real quick. Ground Fog, welcome. Thank you for joining. David, welcome. Thank you for joining. And I see a few others. Thank you for coming in and checking out the episode today. Let me know where you're from. Let me know where you're watching from. And, thank you. So we're going to go on to another. We are going to go on to another article here that I feel was pretty interesting. Where is it? So this is something that I've kind of been keeping my eye on here. And it's about FISA. Now, this was done a while ago. I think it was done last week, I believe. But I thought this was very interesting. So this is by Alan Mosley. Another flip-flop from Trump, from kill FISA to clean renewal. Essentially, Alan goes on to say, with its April 20 deadline for congressional renewal looming, Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, is back in the spotlight. The provision, first adopted in 2008 as part of the FISA Amendments Act, as an update to the original 1978 Act, allows U.S. intelligence agencies to target non-U.S. persons located outside of the United States to acquire foreign intelligence information as a response to perceived technology gaps exposed in the years after 9/11. It achieves this by compelling American telecom companies to collect intelligence on foreign targets and turning over federal data to officials. However, the biggest issue that Alan goes on to explain is about the backdoor search loophole, which allows agencies like the Federal Bureau of Investigation to search the database for communications belonging to U.S. citizens without a warrant. I think that's pretty bad, if I do say so myself. It's a gross violation of privacy. But I just want to say this one more time. It includes a backdoor search loophole that allows agencies like the Federal Bureau of Investigation to search the database for communications belonging to U.S. citizens without a warrant. So they're already violating the Constitution. They're doing this without a warrant. They're saying that they don't need a warrant. And on the topic of warrants, as Alan continues to go on here, individual warrants for each target are not required by Section 702. Instead, the government gets annual approval via the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, to conduct broad spying operations with little to no oversight, with no requirement that government proves to the court that a specific target is even suspected of being an agent of a foreign power. Very interesting, though. Very interesting, though. I wonder how many other foreign agents they've actually kept their eyes on. I would doubt that many of which who have been in the White House have probably gotten the same treatment. Recently, President Donald Trump asked Republicans to unify to extend the program with no changes in oversight or accountability. Now, essentially, what's going on here is they want an extension. Trump wants an extension. They want no oversight. And this type of thing should be unsettling to you. It's a gross violation of privacy. It's a gross violation of our rights. It's a violation of the Constitution as it is. And the fact that you have people that are so wanting to violate these things in order to ascertain or collect data, which, if you know anything about the data game right now, Palantir is been working on or has worked on essentially backdoors and a mechanism where the U.S. federal government can bypass a warrant by having a foreign country collect data on you and me, then go through that mechanism, either buy it or make a deal over it, get that information. And so now it's not the U.S. federal government that's getting your information. It becomes something that was just freely ascertained, and now that it can be bought and sold freely, quote unquote. The FISA thing is a huge problem, and this is something that I think a lot of people back a couple years ago, I think it was, that they wanted Tulsi Gabbard to be 100% like, hey, yeah, are you against this? And, and I hate to say it, but Tulsi Gabbard, she also flip-flops horrendously now too. And unfortunately, her reputation is now somewhat stained, in addition to a myriad of other things. So there's a lot going on. I'm going to continue to watch the Iran situation as it goes. I think we're going to see more and more continued escalation. I think that while everybody's, sitting on edge, I think you're going to see the U.S. try to interdict and seize and take control of more tankers. It is quite amazing, just the audacity that the U.S. federal government has to where they feel that they have the ability to just do this however and whenever they want, especially during a war that is unconstitutional and illegal. I can't say that enough. Regardless of whoever it is that you might listen to, especially to the conservatives out there, if your favorite BFF is Lindsey Graham, I'm here to tell you, Lindsey Graham is going to tell you whatever he needs to tell you in order to get you to support the unconstitutional war. He will sit there and tell you there are decades upon decades of precedent, and the president doesn't need this, or he doesn't need to do that, or whatever the case is. There's Lindsey and many, many other people that are going to echo the same sentiments. And despite all of that, there are processes and there are delegated authorities. And this war, by those processes, by the parameters, by the delegated authorities, are unconstitutional. They are completely illegal, and they should not be happening. So one of the last points I want to make on this is the simple fact that if you are involved in an illegal war, in an illegal operation, one could make, I should say, the deduction that thereby, in extension, the actions that you continue to take while participating in this illegal war are illegal actions. Therefore, there is a violation of the law. You can't just go and start seizing tankers because you feel that you need to justify your illegal war. That's not the way that that works. There's no part in the Constitution whatsoever that says that any of this is allowed. And seizing another country's foreign vessels, well, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. A blockade on a country, it speaks for itself. I've gone over this, and I'll be doing another episode here shortly, discussing war powers, and how some of these things interact and how they work together. But look, the founders fundamentally understood there was no limitation whatsoever. Any act of violence of one sovereign upon another, simply put, is constituted as an act of war. So it doesn't matter whether it's a limited strike, doesn't matter whether it's a excursion, as Trump likes to call it, because he doesn't understand what the word incursion is, or whether it is seizing or blockading other countries. You cannot be doing that. There is no justification for it. There's no reason to be doing it. Nowhere in the Constitution does it grant the president the unilateral authority to do these things, not even under the War Powers Resolution at all. So we need to be very cognizant of this, and we need to pay attention to what starts happening from here on out. And not only just what is being said by the president and by those around him, but watching what they do. Always watch what they do. This is vitally important. We have to watch what they do and also pay attention to what they say. I know some people say that, what they say doesn't matter. I would argue to disagree. So we have to stay upon both, right? Before I let you go, like I said, I'm going to keep this a little bit short. There is a book that I am reading, and I will link this along with the one or two articles that I brought up today. It's called The Anti-Federalists Were Right. It's by Michael Bolden and Michael Meharry at the 10th Amendment Center. Martin, Mason, Jerry, Cato, and the Pennsylvania Dissenters, The Case Against Ratification. I highly recommend this book. I just started it. It is fantastic so far. Michael Bolden and Michael Meharry absolutely knock it out of the park here. If you're not familiar with the 10th Amendment Center, I will also put them down in the description below because I feel like they are a fantastic resource for learning about the Constitution, learning about all sides of the arguments and the debates, and the important portions of history that a lot of institutions and a lot of schools especially will leave out or willfully omit. Fantastic educational resource. If you're not familiar with the Anti-Federalists, this, I feel, is a really good place to start. So, I did buy, I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. I have to put that out there. I did buy this with my own money, but it's well worth what you pay for it. It was about $25. It's not bad, and it goes towards the work that the 10th Amendment Center does. I can't, express enough that education is one of the biggest, most pivotal points of waging any type of battle, especially when it comes to the battle of liberty. So do everything that you can. Go out, learn, pick up a new skill, do something to make yourself better, be an asset to your community, and, do not allow yourself to be swindled because you know better. And you know better by the arguments here. You know better about what your rights are. You know better by what government should and should not do, why it exists, why it shouldn't exist, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing is more than half the battle in my mind. So go out there, get you a book from the 10th Amendment Center. I can't recommend them enough. Highly, highly recommend. So weaponize your intellect. With that being said, thank you so much for coming over to this brief episode of Sentinels of Liberty. I hope you were able to kind of get something out of it today. And let me know kind of in the comments below. What do you think article wise, what kind of piqued an eyebrow for you? Was it the FISA thing? Was it the nuclear codes thing? I think both of them are pretty interesting. I think the FISA thing's a big issue, but I do think that there is growing concerns and some pretty growing credibility that I think that President Trump is just not quite mentally stable and efficient anymore. So we should have an honest conversation about this. Where do we go from there? So thank you, each and every one of you, for coming out, watching the show. Please like, share, subscribe, throw a comment down below. Man, it really helps with the algorithm. I'm here to tell you the algorithm is a son of a gun. And if not enough is going on, it's really, really hard to kind of stay ahead of the pack there and kind of stay involved. So any help that you can do, I really, really appreciate. But more importantly, thank you for taking some time out of your day. That being said, I'm going to grace you guys with a little bit of outro music. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you on Thursday at 1700 for another episode of Sentinels of Liberty podcast. Redbeard out.